Hello everyone. So today let us talk about one very common automation that many people ask me or they have asked me in the past, and I thought I'll probably talk about it because it is important. And this video, although I'm making this video in the category of Scriptrunner, but this is applicable in general. You might not have a Scriptrunner, maybe you want to do it using automation rules or some other form, but this is important, and I will share my experience. Now, when you're working with Jira software, most likely, in most cases, you would be using epics, right? And when you use epics, you may also want to, of course, break down your epics into stories. That is how things are. Now, let us say in my project, I have one epic called as, let us say, I'm just trying to create a name like Epic 1. Let us not create a fancy name. Let us create this epic. And when you have an epic, you have the option, or I should say, when you're using Jira software, you have the option to use this epic story hierarchy. And it is, of course, useful because sometimes you need to break down your big requirement into smaller deliverable. And whenever it comes to epics are something that you may complete in maybe 1 or 2 sprints. Ideally, when you talk about story, if you are trying to follow agile by book, a story is something that you should ideally aim to deliver in one sprint, right? Okay, so let us not talk too much about agile. I just want to talk about this automation. Now, when you have this scenario where you have one epic 1, and under your epic you may have 3, 4, n number of stories or tasks, by the way, you will of course find that when you have this arrangement where you are breaking down epics into stories, and this is something that you have to do, most likely you will also be using maybe story points. And these story points is something that you can see, of course, if you're using the Scrum board, you will see that on the Scrum board, when you have a story, this particular story will display the estimate. And for this particular project, I can see here that story point is not probably on the screen. I can just add it very quickly. So you can, of course, go to your story, or basically the screen which is being used for your story, or basically other issue types. In this case, it is my default issue screen. Let me just check if I have the story points on the screen or not. So my story points were not there, but I can, of course, go back to my project, and no, not the project, but the story, and I can see the story point. Right now, you of course will have multiple stories with different story points, and let us say you have this SP1, and you have, of course, 2 here. So basically, whenever you have these story points, you may want to display some kind of a rolled up view on the epic. And I understand this is something which is desirable for various reasons. So let us break this down, and let us talk about whether doing this automation, where you might receive a request from your stakeholders, business users, project managers especially, that can you please add a story point here, and I want this story point field to display sum of all these story points from these stories. So of course it is possible, it can be done, but I personally don't recommend doing that. I mean, not always, but in most cases I try not to do it. And let me, of course, share my view on this. Now, first of all, Jira software is configured, or I should say not configured natively to display these story points at the epic level. And of course, you can do this automation. That is what we are talking about. But even if you do this automation, you will not really have the story point or the sum of story points displayed at the epic level useful in your reports, right? So this is something that you should be aware of. And you can use something like an advanced roadmap plan, because when you're using advanced roadmap plan, you might be looking at multiple epics, and those multiple epics will basically display like a rolled up view, right? It is possible, but that view is not massively useful for all the use cases where you may want to export data from Jira to somewhere else. Although you can export your plan, but ideally, if you are exporting data from Jira, you are of course looking at your stories, and somehow, somewhere, you should be looking at this total either by doing your own reports, which I personally prefer, like using something like EasyBI, or doing it outside Jira, which is something that many people do. And you must be wondering why and how these numbers are used. Now, it could be story points, it could be original estimate. Let us say we are talking about some estimate. At the epic level, you may want this number so that you can total it, and you can then use this number for capacity management. You can use this number for maybe doing some budget planning for the next quarter. And this is something that I totally understand. It is definitely, it could be useful. And if we talk about, let us say, doing this automation, let us say your users are insisting you that please do it. So instead of updating the story points, which is basically the field automatically on the epic, you can always create like a custom script field that will do this for you, like a total. Now, there's one problem. Imagine you have the story point field here. Now, the way you want to display this, or not really display, the way you should update this story point field at the epic level is basically making sure that there is some kind of a job running. Like, let us say a listener. I think listener is probably better in this case, or maybe I should say job, because job you can run occasionally. So usually people want to do it immediately, so that whenever there is, let us say there are 10 stories, and whenever people are updating these numbers, you want to display a total, or you basically want to update the epic. And it can be a problem, because imagine you have hundreds of epics, and those hundreds of epics will have like thousands of stories. Now, whenever each and every story or some of those stories are updated, you want to make sure the total is updated at the epic, and it can of course cause performance issues. At the same time, you apart from updating the story point field, you also need to check if there's a new story added or removed using the epic link field. So there are different events that you need to monitor, and it can be a problematic situation, because of course you have to monitor these different events, but at the same time you also need to check that only do this update when story point is updated. So it is technically possible, but it is too much it is too much processing. Just displaying a field on the epic, like total story points, is probably better. I have not really done any profiling, so I can't really give you like some numbers. But when you have this field at the epic level, the scripted field will display the number or total number based on whenever you are viewing the epic, right? Or whenever there is usually there is a reindex app that happens that will of course update the field for you. But that is of course another option. But I would still say, if possible, from the beginning, like when we roll out Jira for a new team or a new process, whatever, we try to set up these things from the beginning, because we know and we are aware of possible problems. The last thing that you may want to do, or you should not be doing, is solving one problem with another problem, because adding too many scripts is also not a good thing. And doing these rolled up things, it can actually cause a lot of performance related issues. Sometimes people also want to update the status of the epic automatically, which is again possible, but again I always tell my clients, my users, like business users, that you have project managers, let them do their job and trust them. If they're not really doing their job, then of course you can understand what is wrong, how can we improve. But relying on Jira for doing each and everything for you is also not really, it's not a valid excuse for doing these things. Anyways, I think I've explained, I've shared what I wanted to share today. And yes, I'm making videos after a while now, but I'm trying to make nice videos. Anyways, so I hope you enjoyed watching this video. and you learned something new today. Thank you very much. Bye bye.